Good morning. Thank you for joining us for our daily Devo. Today we're in Matthew chapter 10, verses 24 through the first verse of chapter 11. If you were part of the Devo yesterday, you know we're covering the second half of a section where Jesus is speaking directly to the 12. And so as opposed to when we read the Sermon on the Mount where he was speaking to huge crowds, he's now speaking to this small, special group that he's chosen. The group that are so important because they are the ones who will take this message around the world in the future. And so he's speaking great truth to them. And I'm just going to give you a summary. You can dig into it. But where I pick up the message, Jesus talks about really the promise of persecution. It's a sobering thought, but Jesus wanted them to know they would face persecution. He didn't want them to be surprised by that. He didn't sugarcoat it. But he basically let them know, if I'm your Lord and Master and I'm facing mockery and prejudice and, for this, don't you expect that you will face the same thing? He encourages them, even though they'll face hard times, to have confidence in their faith and to know that even though people can hurt their bodies, they can't affect their soul. He reminds them that the same God who cares about a sparrow cares infinitely more about them, both body and soul. He warns them that their newfound priorities as a disciple may be met with confusion or hostility. That there will be others who won't understand this absolute dedication that causes them to walk away from a profession, that causes them to walk away from family and to follow this man. He talks about authentic discipleship, that first it's marked by a love for Christ that supersedes in everything, even family bonds. It is one that means we're willing to pick up our cross and follow him, a tangible example of a willingness to lay down everything and follow him. Remember, the cross in that day wasn't this beautiful thing that we have on the wall. It'd be like having a picture of an electric chair on your wall. It was a method of cruel execution. And he was letting them know if they're going to follow him, they have to be willing to leave everything behind, even if it means laying down their lives. And remember, of these 12 people, 10 of them will be laying their lives down. They will become martyrs. Again, Judas, he is going to betray Christ. There'll be another one that comes, Matthias, and he is, he's going to pick up that spot. Only John is not going to die. So he's not talking figuratively, he's talking literally. And yet he wants them to know that discipleship has true rewards, that no matter what you walk away from, it's nothing compared to what you will obtain in heaven. One is honor from God, being recognized as someone who we can say, well done, my good and faithful servant. And even others that will bless them and will be generous towards them for what they have done. One of the reasons I love this passage is if you look at this passage, you see Jesus pouring himself out to the 12. Remember, he said he chose the 12 that he might be with them. I love that Jesus didn't start some school where people just came for 4 or 6 hours a day and then they lived their life. He invested his life in them, with them. They got to see all aspects of his life. See, we can think we know someone. You want to get to know someone? Move in with them. I mean, you have a roommate, you get to know them. Those of us who get married, guess what? After living with our spouse, we know them much better than we did before. And see, Jesus couldn't live an inauthentic life because they saw how he lived. And his life was congruent with what he taught. And I love that it says in chapter 11, verse 1, that after he had this private teaching with them, he goes out and then he proclaims, then he speaks, then he continues to reach the crowd because he's now spoke truth to the core. Guys, again, thank you so much for joining us for our daily Devo. I'm so glad you're part of this journey, and I hope God is encouraging you, speaking to you, that you can get closer to him, that you can know him, and you can obey him. I hope you guys have a blessed day. Again, thank you for being part of the daily Devos.